Welcome back to Morning Live. We take a look at your sport news in this hour. Now, as we already know, the South African Football Association has banned its former Vice President Ria Ledwaba from all football activities in a case which is linked to a court case dating back to June 2022. Miss Ledwaba received communication of this decision from the SAFA CEO Lydia Monyepoa, and her legal team have stated that they will be challenging this decision. To talk to us about this, we've roped in Miss Ria Ledwaba's lawyer Vernon Seymor, as well as sports journalist and commentator Khanyiso Tshwaku. Good morning, gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us on Sports on Morning Live. And perhaps, Vernon, I can just start with you, just to paint the picture for our viewers at home in terms of the timelines of what has transpired between SAFA as well as Ria Ledwaba. So we start back in 2022 when there is a court application brought by Miss Ria Ledwaba, and this is around the election at SAFA at that moment in time. And we understand that Judge Holland Muller made a decision on that court case on the 9th of February. Perhaps take us from there in terms of what was the basis of that application brought by Miss Ria Ledwaba, and what were the findings, or rather the judgment given by Holland Muller on the 9th of February.
Good morning to you and good morning to your listeners. The case on the 9th of February revolved around Miss Ledwaba's request to the court to compel SAFA to refer her dispute for arbitration. And because SAFA had denied her access to the arbitration tribunal of SAFA. The judge unfortunately did not agree with the legal team's submissions, dismissed the application, and the matter is now in appeal.
So you're now bringing on an appeal to deal with that dismissal. What, from your understanding, happens during this appeal process relating to Miss Ria Ledwaba? Is it just a let's wait and hear whether or not we'll be granted the opportunity to appeal and then wait for that outcome?
Well, ordinarily, in any appeals process, once the parties are aware of an appeal, there's generally an understanding that the matter has not been finally determined. It will go back to court for a final determination. And so nothing really happens, from the time of the appeal until the time the court renders judgment on the appeal.
But in this particular instance, what then happens after you've lodged your application for an appeal is that Miss Ria Ledwaba on the 6th of March, as I understand it, receives communication from SAFA. Take us through that communication from SAFA relating to her being banned from football activities.
Well, what SAFA did, they sent Miss Ledwaba a letter on the 6th of March. And in the letter, they refer to the judgment that is now under appeal. However, they also indicate that because of the judgment and the rulings by the court, the NEC of SAFA has now decided to declare Miss Ledwaba a persona non grata. That came on the 6th of March. We then responded to SAFA to say, folks, the issue of the 9th February decision is under appeal. You are aware of it. You've acknowledged it. You've encouraged you to oppose it, which is your right. We think any further action at this stage relating to the court matter or the court issues it's premature for us to proceed with any other actions, and we invited them to withdraw this letter.
I'll come back to you, Vernon, in terms of what you've heard from the South African Football Association in terms of the withdrawal of the letter. But let's bring Khanyiso into the discussion now. Khanyiso, your thoughts firstly on Ria Ledwaba being banned from all footballing activities, your overall opinion on what's transpired so far.
Look, it's a political power play, whichever you look at it. I mean, the moment there was a contestation of the presidency and the fact that it didn't quite work out in the manner that you would have thought that it would, was going to lead to such to such particular outcomes. But I think it just goes down to the fact that there needs to be far more democratic, far more open processes when it comes to contestations. where opponents are able to agree and disagree on policies and then be able to accept results. It's just one of those where, again, come election time in sports federations, where lines tend to be crossed, where you'd feel that where a particular where opponents, instead of actually stating what they bring to the plate to the particular organizations, matters do tend to become personal. But I mean, as we've seen in the past, the moment a particular opponent then goes to court, especially when they're on the losing side, it tends to be even at political level, it tends to be viewed very dimly by the organization.
And we look at the distinction being made because we know Ria didn't have a court application by herself. There was also Solly who was also involved. But the outcome for both of them is different because Solly has been placed on suspension pending a DC, whereas for Ria it is a ban. Do you think there is just an element of retribution there? Let's speak to that and the differences between the two outcomes for the two individuals.
Look, it's always going to be difficult for a member to find themselves in a position where they are suspended. It's one of those where a person in power will always be able to use the processes in place to ensure that if a particular person is seen to be transgressing particular laws, the laws can and will be used against them. So it's going to be interesting to see how this particular matter pans out. Look, internal matters, internal disciplinary matters like these always tend to go in a different way. So it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting to see how this particular, especially in Solly whether that in the fact that he's suspended pending a DC, because it's going to be an interesting question to see what happens if his DC actually goes in his way instead of actually now finding in SAFA's favor.
Indeed. Vernon, let's come back to what you were saying earlier. So you received the communication, rather Ria receives the communication on the 6th of March to inform her that she's been banned from all footballing activities. You then addressed SAFA on the 12th of March saying you would like them to withdraw that letter. Have you heard anything back from the South African Football Association since your communication of the 12th?
No, I can't that the letter went off to the CEO, and since from SAFA. But I want to highlight something around this distinction between Ria and the other one. In Ria's case, there's been absolute no due process. There has been no charges. There's been no hearing. There's been no notice of intention to take action against her. There's been no opportunity to defend herself. Nothing. Such. No due process whatsoever against Ledwaba. You cannot trample on people's rights in this country and think you can get away with it.
All right, Vernon, I suppose now we just wait and see what the next communication will be from the South African Football Association. But we will keep checking up and just trying to find out what the status of your appeal is, as well as the outcome in that regard. Thank you so much for your time this morning.
Thank you for having us.
It's always lovely having you. Thank you so much for joining us this morning as we try to dissect these happenings out at the South African Football Association. And that's basically how we wrap it up. Vernon Seymor, who is the legal representative for Ria Ledwaba, as well as sport journalist and commentator Khanyiso Tshwaku, joining us to speak about the banning of Ria Ledwaba from all footballing activities by the South African Football Association. Of course, her lawyers do mention that she is appealing that decision and will wait and see what that outcome will be. That's how we wrap up your sport news in this hour.